All right, so today we're on notes number 32, and today we're going to go over how we find exact values for quadrantal angles, meaning like sine of 0, cosine of 90, tangent of 180, etc. Remember that quadrantal angles are the angles that are multiples of 90 degrees, so their terminal side always lies on an axis. So for example, let's say I have 90 degrees. The initial side here is on the positive x-axis, and then we go counterclockwise 90 degrees, so the terminal side lies on the y-axis. So that's if you put it in standard position. And so what happens with each of these is we can't just take a point on the terminal side and drop a perpendicular to the x-axis in order to make a triangle, like a reference triangle as we did in our last lesson. See, if I drop a point perpendicular to the x-axis, I don't have a triangle. And let's imagine that we had a different one, like maybe we have 180 degrees. So here's our initial side, here's our terminal side, this is 180. And just like the last one, if I have a point on my terminal side and I try to drop a perpendicular to the x-axis, I don't get a triangle. I'm already on the x-axis. So the thing is, there is still a way to find trig values for these angles. If you grab your calculator, and let's check to see if I'm in degrees. Yep. So let's say I want to find the sine of 0. It does have a value. It's 0 in this case. Let's say I want to find the cosine of 180 degrees. It's -1. So where are these numbers coming from? Let's say I want to find the tangent of 90 degrees. Actually, that one gave me an error, and that doesn't mean I did something wrong. This one is actually undefined. So some of them have values and some of them are undefined, and we're about to find out why. So we need a different method other than drawing a reference triangle to find the trigonometric values of these angles. So that's what I'm going to teach you today. So it says, find all 6 trig values, meaning sine, cosine, tangent, secant, cosecant, cotangent, for all of the quadrantal angles. So we're going to do 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and 270 degrees. But once we get to 360, it's going to be exactly the same as 0 because those are in the same position. They're coterminal. So we really only have to do this 4 times. And the method I'm going to use, instead of a reference triangle, I'm going to go back to the Xyr definitions from the previous a couple lessons ago. So let's review the Xyr definitions. So you have a right triangle, and you have angle theta, and adjacent to theta is x, and opposite theta is y, and then r is on the hypotenuse. So remember, sine theta is y over r, etc. We have all the different ratios for all the functions. And also remember that r squared equals x squared plus y squared from the Pythagorean theorem. So r is the square root of x squared plus y squared. And r is always positive, even though x may be negative if you're going left and y may be negative if you're going down. So we're going to use those ideas to help us with these problems today. And I'm actually going to start with 90 degrees, and then I'll come back to 0 degrees in a minute. So let's put our angle in standard position. So here's 90 degrees. Okay, so I am going to find a point on the terminal side. And I can choose whatever point I want. That could be the point 0, 10, 0, 99, 0, 1. Whatever I want, I'm going to use 0, 1 because it's the easiest to work with. So my x value is 0, and my y value is 1. What's my r value? R is the square root of 0 squared plus 1 squared. Square root of 1, that's 1. R is 1. So I'm going to use x equals 0, y equals 1, and r equals 1. So the sine of 90 degrees is y over r. That would be 1 over 1, and that's 1. So let's do the reciprocal. The cosecant of 90 degrees is the reciprocal of 1, and that's 1. Let's do the cosine of 90 degrees. Cosine of an angle is x over r, and x is 0, r is 1, 0 over 1 is 0. Let's do the reciprocal, secant. Secant of 90 degrees. What's the reciprocal of 0? Maybe you don't know the answer to that, so let's think about it in a different way. Secant is hypotenuse over adjacent, r over x. That would be 1 divided by 0. And we know that division by 0 is undefined, so that one is undefined. Let's do tangent of 90. Tangent is y over x, opposite over adjacent. Y over x would be 1 over 0, and that's also undefined. Remember, we did that one on the calculator a minute ago. And then cotangent of 90 degrees. Cotangent is x over y. That would be 0 over 1, and that's 0. So if you were to pick any of those and put them in your calculator, you should get these same answers. Now, you might be wondering, how do I put cosecant or secant or cotangent into my calculator? You don't have a button for those. So if you wanted to do cosecant, you just have to remember it's the reciprocal of sine. So you do 1 divided by sine of the angle. Or if you want to do secant, it's the reciprocal of cosine. So 1 divided by the cosine of the angle. See, that one turned out to be undefined. Okay, let's go back now and do 0 degrees. By the way, you're going to be using these ideas a ton all throughout the rest of the semester. Every time you do trig, these things are going to pop up again. Not all of them, like not finding all 6 values necessarily, but kind of one here, one there. So I don't want you to memorize all of these, but I want you to understand how to find them when you need them, how to draw the little picture and figure out the answer as you go. Now let's do 0. So we have our initial side of the angle, and then if we're going 0 degrees, the terminal side is the same as the initial side. And then a good point on the terminal side, you could choose anything, 5, 0, 10, 0, 1,000, 0, but let's make it easy on ourselves and choose 1, 0. So x is 1, y is 0, and then using the Pythagorean theorem, we get r equals 1. Just a little clue here, for all of these, we're going to choose numbers so that we get r equals 1. That's going to make it easier on ourselves. So the sine of 0 degrees is y over r, 0 over 1 is 0. And the cosecant of 0 degrees is r over y, 1 over 0 is undefined. Just so you know, anytime you get a 0, the reciprocal will be undefined, and vice versa for these values. Cosine of 0 degrees is x over r, so 1 over 1 is 1. And for secant, the reciprocal of 1 is 1. For tangent, tangent of 0 degrees, tangent is y over x, 0 over 1 is 0, and so the cotangent is the reciprocal, so that would be undefined. I hope you're writing all of these down, because this is something that might seem really obvious right now, but as we move on in the next couple of days to do other kinds of problems, I guarantee you're very likely to forget to do it this way. So make sure it's in your notes so you can refer back. Okay, let's move on to 180 degrees. So here's my initial side, here's my terminal side, here's my 180 degrees. So let's take a point on the terminal side. Let's take the point -1, 0. So x is -1, y is 0, and r is 1. So the sine of 180 degrees, y over r, 0 over 1 is 0. Cosecant of 180 degrees, the reciprocal, undefined. Cosine of 180 degrees, cosine is x over r, -1 over 1 is -1, and secant of 180 degrees, the reciprocal, is -1. Tangent of 180 degrees, tangent is y over x, 0 over -1 is 0, and cotangent of 180 degrees, the reciprocal, is undefined. And then we have one more, 270 degrees. So here's the initial side, here's the terminal side, 270. Let's find a point on the terminal side. Let's use the point 0, -1. So x is 0, y is -1, and r is 1. So the sine of 270 degrees, y over x, y over y over r for sine. Negative 1 over 1 is negative 1. The cosecant of 270, the reciprocal, would be negative 1. The cosine of 270 degrees is x over r, 0 over 1 is 0, and the reciprocal of that, secant of 270 degrees, is undefined. Tangent of 270 degrees, y over x, negative 1 over 0 is undefined. And cotangent of 270 degrees, the reciprocal of that is 0. Now, if you were asked to find, let's say, the sine of 450 degrees, remember that's going to be coterminal with 90 degrees because they're 360 degrees apart. So if you were trying to go 450 degrees, you would start by going all the way around the circle 360 and then another 90. So if you ever have to find the sine of 450, you just find the sine of 90 instead. Or similarly, if you were asked to find, let's say the secant of negative 90 degrees, just remember negative 90 means go clockwise instead of counterclockwise. So you're actually at the same place as 270. So the secant of negative 90 degrees is equal to the secant of 270 degrees, so you would just do that. Okay, all the points that I chose to use are points that lie on what we call the unit circle, because the center is the origin and they are 1 unit from the origin. So if I draw the circle here, whoa, crazy circle. Okay, that is the unit circle. It has a radius of 1. Unit circle, radius equals 1, center is 0, 0. Okay, so if you ever hear people talking about the unit circle with trigonometry, they're talking about this circle. A lot of people use this circle to find values of other angles, so like 30 degrees and 60 degrees and 45 degrees. But what I like to do is I like to just use the unit circle for the ones we've been learning today, 90 and 180 and 270 and so on. And next time I'm going to show you a different tool that we can use to find others. So we're going to wrap up today's lesson with a few examples. And when you do your homework assignment, I don't really want you to worry about the directions in the book. They have a whole paragraph of directions, but I just want you to do exactly as I'm about to show you. Let's say you want to find the tangent of 180 degrees. Okay, no problem. Start by drawing a picture. Here's the initial side. Here's the terminal side, 180 degrees. A point on the terminal side, the point I want to use is negative 1, 0. Now for tangent, I need y over x, because that would be opposite over adjacent if it was a triangle. And y over x is 0 over negative 1, and that is 0. So we have our answer. See, you don't necessarily have to find all 6, just the one that you're asked for. Let's do another example. Let's say we wanted to find the, let's say, cosecant of 270 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to draw a picture. 270 degrees, here's the initial side, here's a terminal side. Here's our angle. I want a point on the terminal side, so that point I'm going to use 0, negative 1. Now cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so instead of y over r, we want r over y. We want hypotenuse over opposite if it was a triangle. And remember the r value is going to be 1. So we end up with just 1 over negative 1, so our answer is negative 1. Now, by the way, if you ever are asked to find the sine value or the cosine value, and you're using the unit circle, because the value of r is 1, because the sine of an angle is y over r, it's just going to be y on the unit circle. And if you're asked for the cosine of the angle, because the cosine is x over r, but r is 1, it's just going to be x on the unit circle. So if you're on the unit circle, radius 1, every point's coordinates, x, y, are actually just cosine, sine. So when you're on the unit circle, the x coordinate is the cosine, the y coordinate is the sine. That's a really simple way to remember it. So if I'm finding, let's say, the cosine of 90 degrees, here's my picture, 90 degrees. This point is a point 0, 1. All I need to know is the cosine is the x coordinate, so my answer is 0. Cosine is x, sine is y. Conveniently, those are in alphabetical order, cosine before sine, x before y, so that helps me remember. Now I'm also going to do another example similar to what you have in your book, maybe 2 more quick examples. So let's say we wanted to find, I don't know, am I numbering all these examples? 1, 2, 3, okay. Let's say we wanted to find the secant of negative 180 degrees. So draw the picture, and then remember for negative you're just going to go clockwise. And then find the point, negative 1, 0. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. Cosine is the x coordinate. And the reciprocal of negative 1 is negative 1. And then lastly, we have some problems in there that kind of mix up a bunch of things, so let me give you an example. Suppose you see something like this, 3 times sine squared 90 plus 2 tangent 180. Let's say you have something like that. Well, you're going to have to find the sine of 90 and the tangent of 180. And by the way, if you see sine squared 90, what it actually means is the sine of 90 squared. They just put the squared inside so that they don't have to write parentheses. So what we're doing is 3 times the sine of 90 degrees squared plus 2 times the tangent of 180 degrees. So let's figure out the sine of 90 and the tangent of 180. So we draw a little picture for 90 degrees. Sine would be the y coordinate, and this is the point 0, 1, so the sine of 90 is 1. And then for 180, this point has coordinates negative 1, 0. Tangent is y over x, 0 over negative 1 is 0. So we're finding 3 times 1 squared plus 2 times 0, and that's going to be 3. Okay, so remember for your assignment, I'm asking you to not worry about the directions in the book, just kind of do it the way you saw me and the way you saw me demonstrate it. And then 93 and 95 are basically practice problems like the kind you did yesterday, because I think you need extra practice with that kind of problem. The first set has to do with quadrantal angles. Okay, thank you so much.